There are all sorts of tightnesses, let it be said. But, yeah, the administration is working at it. However, while they're working at it, the people are groaning. We might not know all the details as well as they might want us to, but there's a sense in which you get some people saying that, look, whoever was in charge much more couldn't be done, which is not to say that we're leaving it like this, but they're assuring us that it is a work in progress and they are working at it. Now I'm telling you about electricity. What can we do without electricity? Yet we're hearing that, whereas some people might say that the cost of electricity to them is also high, further depleting what is available for food. That's what we talked about yesterday. Now the minister has said that actually it's unsustainable where it's at now. And so they're talking about something called cost-reflective tariff. And that was the voice of Mr. Adebayo Adelabu, former head of media and communications, Eco Electricity Distribution Company. You're welcome, sir, as usual. So, well, you are going to be defending this matter, or is it better put as explaining it?
I'm explaining it.
Okay.
I'm actually not defending
okay.
it. I'm explaining the intricacies, the dynamics.
The dynamics, which, if all goes according to the plan that we're hearing about now, the tariff for electricity might just be going up. Might just be going up. Okay, what we do, before we come to studio for the discussion, we do have a package that we put out earlier. Let's play that package by our Adebayo Adelabu to sort of get some perspective on it.
We are also establishing a customer complaint escalation center.
This year, 450 billion naira was budgeted for subsidy, but the ministry needs over 2 trillion naira to pay for it. Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, said state governments will now be allowed to generate electricity independently to supply power to their state. Over 50 billion naira has been earmarked in the 2024 budget to build mini-grids to supply power to remote areas. He read a riot act to the electricity distribution companies, urging them to sit up or have their licenses withdrawn.
It is either we look for money at all costs to fund the subsidy because of the political situation of the country and the hardship people are passing through, or we bite the bullet and everybody understands, okay, let's bring the roof down first. Let's reflect everything on market commercial basis. Then we'll start a rebuilding, because it is postponing the evil days if we continue anyway. So I am not calling for removal of subsidy before they misquote me, but it's a decision for the entirety of the country to decide. These are assets that we spend the country's money on, and our brothers, part of us, will deliberately sabotage it. So you can see that some people are hiding somewhere that do not want this sector to work.
The minister also said the frequent collapse of the grid, which has occurred about 6 times between December 2023 and February this year, is caused by shortage of gas, old and obsolete machines in the grid value chain, low capacity of evacuate-generated power, and destruction of power stations in some parts of the northeast geopolitical zone of the country. Adebayo Adelabu, TVC News, Abuja.
Well, thanks to Adebayo there, and well, that's really the long and short of it. There are those who would have heard for the first time, perhaps, that, oh, this subsidy matter that you think was only in the transport sector via petroleum subsidy removal. There actually is subsidy too on electricity power, and it can't remain where it is. Now, as I was saying, there are those who think that, well, if they're not actively campaigning that it's too high, they feel it's just, I can just barely manage myself. Just let it be. But we're now hearing the ministers say that it's not going to work. It can't work. It's not sustainable.
It's so interesting hearing Chief Adelabu suddenly, changing position.
Mm-hmm.
On the 2nd of January this year,
Yes.
many newspapers carried a report. And I'm going to read just a paragraph. I mean, let me read the caption, and it says, FG insists on sustaining electricity subsidy. That was the caption. On the 2nd of this month.
Yes.
And it says that the federal government has said that even though the process of arriving at a cost-reflective tariff, it was still on, federal government would do everything to sustain electricity tariff.
Where it was, where it is.
That was just
January.
about a month ago.
Yeah.
Now, the same minister is maybe acting like, some people will say, maybe like a turncoat, and is suddenly saying he's changing his position. When you see this type of discordant tunes emanating from the same, agency of government, it tells you something that, the government is finding itself between the rock and the hard place. Now let us lay the foundation.
Yes, sir. And
Let us lay
I
the
beg your pardon for interrupting,
foundation.
but when that turnaround by the minister, the first thing it would indicate is that the minister now has better information than when he was speaking earlier.
Perhaps he now does. Perhaps he now has better information. He's now talking from the background of information and knowledge.
Yes. And
about
that, and that it's, we need a cost-reflective tariff. Where it's at now is not sustainable.
I'm going to explain that. Let us first lay the foundation for what subsidy. We all know. We all have an idea of what subsidy is generally, and it is done globally. You have the true cost of a commodity or service, and then you now have the allowed cost of that service. The question now is, what is the true cost of per kilowatt hour of electricity in Nigeria, and what is the true cost? And when there is a gap between the true cost and the allowed cost, because government, for so many reasons, for protection of the vulnerable, for political reasons, and for economic sustainability and the rest of that, government will now come in and say, you know what? We know that there is a gap. If you are to sell this, if you are to price this commodity or service at its true cost, the people, the masses, will not be able to bear it. Now, I will come in and pay the difference, and that is what has been happening. It was not just this government; it was being done, all along. And in the year 2021, the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, being the regulator of the industry, attempted to bridge the gap between the true cost and the allowed cost. And they came up with what is known as the multi-year tariff order. Now, NEC came up with what you call the MITO 2022. And with MITO, the true cost then was 59 point something naira, and then 62 point something naira. That was the true cost. Now, for the allowed cost, they now did something. They differentiated. They made a distinction between discos that are located in places where you have, a majority of high-income earners or people, affordability now. And they also looked at discos where you have people who are more vulnerable than you have in other places. For a co-electricity distribution company, for example, the difference between the true cost and the allowed cost, the true cost then was 62 point something naira, and then the allowed cost was 59. The true cost was 62, and then the allowed cost was 59 naira. So you now have just a difference of 2 naira plus that government was paying. So NEC was able to do that, and then the subsidy that government was paying actually came down in the year 2021-22. And then, as at the first quarter of last year, the subsidy for first quarter of last year was 52 billion naira that government paid.
Pan-Nigeria.
Pan-Nigeria. But by the time this new government came in...
By the way, we're also picking up the tab for a strategic deployment of electricity to neighboring country like Niger. All of that is paid by the... What? By government or by the consumer here?
No. Government does not subsidize, consumption by, foreign, by those other countries.
They just shunt it across.
Those ones, buy bulk power from us, at
a given rate.
And
they do their best to make sure that there's no failure.
If anything at all, perhaps, it's their government that will take care of that. This is for Nigerian consumers of electricity.
Okay.
So it was 52 billion, but by the third quarter of last year, after some changes in the macroeconomic environment, one, we know the removal of subsidy to petrol, then the floating of the naira, that shot up the cost of electricity. As at that time, the generation cost, because you look at the cost across the value chain, you look at the generation cost, the transmission cost, and the distribution cost. The generation cost as at that time was 31 before the changes in the macroeconomic environment. The generation cost of per kilowatt of electricity per kilowatt was 31 naira, and it jumped up to 54. Transmission cost jumped from 6 naira to over 9 naira. Distribution cost from 30 naira to 47. So when you aggregate everything, we now have, the true cost of electricity coming to, averagely, per Nigeria, coming to about from 59 to 109.
Now, that's a humongous leap.
Per kilowatt hour.
Per kilowatt hour. That's a humongous leap.
So
when you say we now have over 100, does that take care? Is that just cost reflective? Because I noticed.
Yeah, that is the cost.
That would be the cost reflective.
That is the cost reflective. That is the cost reflective. And don't forget that we had said that in the first quarter it was just 59. Cost reflective was 62 for discos for 62 for your Lagos. I think AEDC was 65 naira for cost reflective. And then the difference that government was paying, for example, in Lagos between 59 and 62 is just about maybe not up to 3 naira. You understand? But per kilowatt hour. But by the third quarter, when those changes in the macroeconomic environment, took place, you can see that government, from 2 naira or 3 naira per kilowatt hour, government was paying for a place like Lagos. Government was paying over 47 naira per kilowatt hour to subsidize. So for every kilowatt hour that is consumed, by anybody, government subsidizes with 47 naira. Now,
is there an aspect of this that look? There's a lot of wastage. There's wastages and all of that transmission shortfalls. Put it under production, if that is the word to use in this case.
It is called aggregate technical commercial and collection losses.
Because where I was trying to get to is that should our production capacity have been much better, wouldn't it have made a difference? And are we also sort of Are we trapped in the situation that, look, what we have, we must put out, but we have to do so, as our people say, untabara la mata?
No, you see, the thing about electricity, realize that electricity is not something that you produce and you store. You understand? It has to be consumed. So, and in any case, we are not even producing...
Yeah, but they are looking at the cost of... I mean, we're not able to make use of economies of scale because, the whole infrastructure is not where all the engineers and scientists want it to be right now.
Yeah. One of the issues in the sector is that it is highly dependent on, it is an import-based sector. You understand? Almost everything that they use, you understand? So if the price of dollar goes up,
it will affect.
It will affect.
What we're
it
doing
will impact, what we have here. And that is exactly what is happening. As at the third quarter of last year, by the end of last year, government, from 52 billion, it had jumped up to 337 billion. So now, the problem is this, and that is why I say that government is finding itself, between the rock and the hard place. The dust raised by the removal of petroleum subsidy is still is very much in the air. It has not settled, and now you want to, and you know that labor is still, labor is still up in arms with government, say even over the removal of petroleum subsidy. Now, for government now to go ahead to say that it wants to remove subsidy on electricity, it's so government is, if you heard the minister well, he said, I am not advocating because he doesn't want to be in the bad books of Nigerians.
Yes, he said before I'm misquoted. It is not sustainable.
But that if I wish, so
he's indicating an inevitability to the situation.
So that is the issue now. That do we continue to patch up and say that we are postponing the evil days, or like using his word, that do we just once for all bite the bullet,
which is what we did. That was what we did in the petroleum subsidy thing. President Tinubu helped us on that one on his very first day, inauguration day. He bit the bullet, and there are those who are still complaining.
But even at that,
they're complaining at that biting of the bullet. Even though we're now looking with hindsight and saying, well, we were going to get there anyway. Maybe the shock has sort of destabilized us.
We have not gotten out of the shock.
Yes. Mr. George, good morning to you. Thank you for calling in.
Good morning, Uncle Yori.
Yes.
Good morning to the guest.
Yes.
Good morning.
Uncle Yori, the minister should show us his roadmap on what he wants to do in that sector before coming out to tell us that the government cannot sustain subsidy. What is the difference between removal of subsidy and his pronouncement that government cannot sustain it? If he says that there are some people who do not want the power supply to improve, let him fight the people. That's why he's there as the minister. Subsidy removal of fuel, we are all seeing what it has cost now. More money came to the government, but this money has been circulated to governors and local government chairmen. These people have not seen the impact of the difference of the money they've been getting. Some of the states are getting 3 times what they were getting before. But the people themselves are not feeling the impact of this thing. So if the minister is saying that there are some people who do not want the sector to work, then why is he there? There should be power before you start talking about tariff increase.
Indeed.
People are paying for what they are not even enjoying right now. Why don't you work? I expect the minister to talk about how the The national grid that is collapsing every day can be repaired, can be addressed for people to see power. How what is being generated by GenCos can reach discos. How the transmission point can become viable for Nigerians to see light. He's not talking about that. He's now telling us that the government cannot sustain subsidy.
Okay.
As if he's a marketer for the discos. I'm not able to take that on priori.
All right, then. Thank you very much for calling in, Mr. George.
What is there to do?
Sure.
In fact, I do not believe that he has what it takes to handle that ministry.
Okay, well, thank you.
Here,
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for calling in. Well, that remains to be seen. But you see, you were using the expression between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
This really is the story, quite frankly, of this particular administration.
Yeah.
But Mr. George said a lot of things in there that I'm sure you won't disagree with. Look, no undue criticism meant, but we're actually paying for what we're not really getting. A lot of people have the story of, it would be one thing if you could pay and then depend on the fact that you have a known quantum of power for a known time, but that is not the case, yet you will still pay. So that idea, would you like to speak to that aspect about, shouldn't we have brought the thing to a stabilized situation before we begin to talk about this, couple that with the incessant collapses of the grid?
You see, this is like which comes first. This is like the question of which comes first, the egg or the hen.
Or the chicken. Oh, the egg or the hen.
The egg or the hen. Which comes first? It's like, so it will be an unending question. You understand? If we want to go that route to say, okay, do we stabilize?
Do we work on it?
Do we stabilize, the sector first, and then when it is stabilized, then we now can be talking of removing subsidy.
That's why the minister was carefully adding in there that don't let them say that Adebayo Adelabu said it.
Said this, yeah.
It's not me. He seems to be indicating that it's the indices.
You see,
if you know it, why? Although maybe I shouldn't just. You were saying that early January this year, he was saying that we're able to manage. I mean,
of course.
We're able to manage.
Just January.
Now he's saying that something is going to have to change.
Yeah. So, and you see.
And salaries are not changing.
Why the area, my own point of convergence with Mr. George's position is that, he's saying that perhaps, if I heard him well, he is not entirely saying no to subsidy removal, but he wants to have a roadmap to see what is going to happen, and the because
it's a reasonable position, isn't it?
Because the argument is this, his own argument is that when petroleum subsidy was removed, government had more money in its coffers. And this money, the question now is not just having more money. How are you utilizing the money that you have?
What difference has it made?
What difference has it made in the lives of the people? And I think an average Nigerian, when you lay the facts before them, with the benefit of hindsight that people like us have, we know. I want to agree with the minister that it is not sustainable. I have spent over 40 years of my life in the power sector.
Okay, it is not sustainable.
So it is not sustainable. But the thing is that
because we're not rich, we're not really a rich country like that.
But the thing again is this: if you tell me that if a father comes into the house and he says, what, no more meat in this house, you understand? You need to provide alternative to meat. You don't just say no more meat in this house and then everybody agrees with you. Okay, we want to understand what do we have as alternative to me, and I think this is the position of Nigerians.
It's a form of Labour's argument.
Yeah,
it's also what you've just said is a form of Labour's argument, although emotions tend to get frayed once we get into it. But it's a very reasonable position that Mr. George and many Nigerians are counseling that. Let me see your roadmap so that in the course of that, we will know what the challenges are, where you are trying to get to, what is preventing you, and we'll also be able to evaluate you. But before you go, sir, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Before you go, Alhaji Yahaya has called in from Bidda. Good morning, Alhaji.
In the course of that, we will try to get...
Alhaji Yahaya, did you hear me? Good morning, sir.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
In the respect of the topic you are discussing, yeah, I'm hearing you. Yeah, in the respect of the topic you are discussing this morning, it's a very good topic that really affects people. But my concern, the minister say, what's it called? Subsidy is unsustainable. My question is, were there subsidy before? Because I said this because in that 2014, 2015, my bill, it never used to hold me. My bill, I would pay more than what I was billed. But now, I'm paying, they will bill me over what maybe I'm consuming. And this, I will pay less than what I'm billed. Presently now, my bill read about 500. I'm worrying about 500 plus, 500 naira plus, 500,000 plus. So is that the subsidy that the government is owing? Because it's always bother me. When they will bill me around 25,000, and when they come for the payment, I'll pay 10 or 5,000, and they collect it. So the remaining debt, where is it going to really? That is my problem. Secondly, paying a subsidy, I don't think is a problem. Even the developed countries pay subsidy in most of their for a country to sustain.
Okay.
You cannot just remove everything at once.
All right, I think that's the bottom line. That really is the bottom line. Thank you very much, Alhaji Yahaya in Bidda. His complaint is that everything is being taken away from us. It's like, let me breathe, is what the average Nigerian is saying.
Yes, and you see, an average Nigerian, I want to align with that position of let me breathe. And, you know, we have every right to say that. But then, in the face of, you know, stark realities of the moment, we also need to look at some things. One thing about subsidy worldwide is that, one, there are factors that you consider in whether you want to continue with subsidy or not. It's not just about affording the subsidy now. It's about, you know, your ability to continue to afford it, sustainability. That is number one. Then the number two consideration for subsidy is that how is the subsidy getting to the right target? You also need to ask that question.
Which was the problem we asked in the petroleum.
So,
Subsidy.
and it is already happening.
And the minister
it is already happening in the electricity.
The minister was speaking about saboteurs. He was speaking about those who don't want the sector to work. And as Mr. George said, you're the minister. Name them.
You see,
Action it.
There is this
What's the problem?
There is this trite principle of law that he
who
alleges
must prove.
No
way a minister will come out and say a thing like that. So he knows what he's talking about.
If the minister is saying that there are people,
yes,
you understand, Nigerians are less bothered about, you know, those people. We want to see the government we have put in place, you know, to serve us and then protect our interests, not the interests of those that do not want the sector to work. I expect that the government, with all that it has going for him, security, intelligence, and everything, should be able to go after those people and then rein them in.
Because they
They should be
clearly
reined
are
in.
part of the problem.
They should be reined in.
Well, it's well, you started off by explaining that, trite aspect of law that you who alleges must prove.
Must prove.
And we have this thing, a phobia of, what I was looking for the English of Soju Abeniko.
I mean, to hit the nail on
the head. We don't do that. That's not a national pastime.
So
we would say the euphemism of there are those who don't want this place to work.
So, I mean,
I've got to go on a break now.
Okay.
I'm coming right back, sir, and then you'll continue. And we'll also continue taking your calls as well. Stay with us. We'll be right back.